Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here this evening. I hope this is going to be a great learning experience for all of you. So welcome. Now, for those that have not been on a session before, what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to introduce the team for tonight. Okay, I'm Francois Coetzee. Okay, I'm an innovator and an entrepreneur. I'm also a coach and a trainer, and I specialize in working with coaches, individuals, and business leaders to develop human and business potential. Okay, sorry, let me just mute someone here. I'm going to keep you guys on mute. There will be an opportunity for questions a little bit later, and then I'll unmute you. So resist the urge to unmute yourself. Okay, we're going to be joined a little bit later by my colleague and friend Sjoerd de Waal, all the way from Rotterdam in the Netherlands. And he's going to join us in on the question and answer part of the session. Okay. If I give you a little bit of a background, Sjoerd is a whole brain leader. He's also a coach and a trainer, and he specializes in working with leaders across all of the organization and developing their whole brain leadership. Okay, so as I mentioned, we have time at the end of the session to engage in dialogue. So if you have any questions, just find your chat box and just type the questions in there. And what Sjoerd will be doing is he'll monitor the questions and he'll keep me on the straight and narrow along the way. At the end of the session, we'll also spend some time on as many of the questions as we have time for. Now, some of you, and I'm seeing more people are joining us, some of you have attended some of our past webinars and know that I like to start just by sitting down and bringing our attention to the present. So let's just do that. So as you are sitting where you are, just relax your whole body and become aware of your breath. And just breathe in, deep in and out. And in and out. And just try to breathe a little deeper, almost like 5 counts in, 5 counts out. So in, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4. And just keep on breathing as deeply as that, just for a little bit. And as you are breathing like that, just shift your focus to the area around your heart. And feel your breath coming in through your heart, down your spine, and out through your center. And just practice breathing this way a few times to ease into this state. And as you're breathing, just activate a positive feeling where you feel a really deep connection to yourself. This can be a genuine feeling of appreciation or care for someone, someplace, or experience in your life. And notice, if you will, an image that comes to mind. And just notice a feeling and notice where that feeling resides in your body. And then breathe that image and that feeling into your head. Into your heart. Into your center. And into your being. And just become aware of the space around you. And breathe your connection into that space. And extend the connection you have to everyone and the world around you. And just feel their presence around you and welcome it into your being. Saying to yourself, I am centered. I am open to what may come. I am aware. I am alert and clear. I am connected to myself, to you, and all the resources within and around us. I am ready to hold on to whatever may emerge within myself and between us from the best of myself. And when you're ready, just bring your attention to the here and now and welcome. Okay, I'm going to start here tonight just with a story. This picture that you see, this is Giraffe in 1978. As a teenage boy, he returned to his birthplace at Aruna Sapori, a river island on the Brahmaputra. And on his way home, he witnessed a sight that really shook him to the core. As he was traveling, he saw more than 100 snakes curved, looped, and twisted lifelessly on a deserted sandbar. The snakes had been washed up to the sandbar by floods and had died without tree cover. And his heart broke. And very distressed, he went to a nearby village where the villagers asked him to grow trees to save the reptiles. They said to him, where there are trees, there are birds. And where there are birds, there will be birds' eggs and fledglings. And that's good food for snakes. And along with this wisdom, the villagers offered him 50 seeds and 25 bamboo plants to plant. And Jadav, just 15 or 16 years old at the time, he set out all alone to plant life on this tough terrain of the eroded island, which was just covered with sand and silt. And even at this young age, Jadav knew that he wanted to create a world where snakes and animals had a safe haven where they could survive and thrive. Which brings us to our first slide. Now, in a previous webinar, we talked extensively about the Japanese concept of ikigai. And as a refresher, I'll just touch on this briefly again, since we've got a couple of new people on this webinar. Ikigai is thought to combine the Japanese words ikiguru, meaning to live, and kai, meaning the realization of what one hopes for. Now, together, those two words create the concept of a reason to live, or the idea of having a purpose in life. Ikigai aims to describe the pleasures and the meaning of life. It doesn't only apply to the big goals and achievements, but it also applies to the small everyday things that you experience as you go about living. Ikigai may result in success, but success is not the outcome for having Ikigai. Ikigai is very much a state of mind. And having a sense of Ikigai points to a frame of mind where people feel that they can build a happy and an active life. It is a barometer which reflects the person's outlook on life in an integrated and representative way. It gives you a life of purpose while also giving you the persistence to face the trials and tribulations of life and carry on. Ikigai is about discovering, defining, and appreciating those of life's pleasures that have meaning for you. Now, if we look at this diagram, you will see there are four major components that should be considered. And those four components consider the four core questions. Number one, what is it that the world needs? Number two, what is it that you love to do? Number three, what is it that you are good at? And number four, and what can you be paid for? Now, this is drawn as a Venn diagram with the overlaps between these questions giving us a lot more information. Now, the overlap between what the world needs and what you love to do indicates your mission. Now, mission typically shows you that unique thing that you love to do and which offers something unique to the world. The overlap between what you love to do and what you are good at shows us where your passion lies. Passion is what brings you energy and joy, and passion keeps you going when the obstacles of life start slowing you down. Where what you're good at intersects with what you can be paid for is typically where we find ourselves when we settle in a profession. We all aim for a profession where we can do what we enjoy and get paid for it. Now, the overlap between what you can get paid for and what the world needs is where vocation lies. This is where we experience the strong feeling of suitability for the work that we do. This is often what we dedicate ourselves to in building a career. It is wonderful following your mission or your passion or your profession or your vocation or existing in any of these partial overlaps, but it can still leave us with a feeling that something is missing. And if we focus on only one or some while excluding the others. Now, if you look at the center of this diagram, there's an overlap between what the world needs, what you love to do, what you are good at, and what you can get paid for. Now, this is the sweet spot where purpose or reason for being exists. Now, in order to allow purpose to emerge over time, we ask the questions in a very specific order. And we start with the most important question. What is it that the world needs? And we have to start with this question because this gives us the biggest springboard to possibility before you even think about answering any of the other questions. But before we even start to ask that question, it brings us to the topic of our webinar tonight, okay? Because if I want to know what it is that the world needs, it's very important for me to know which world am I preparing for. We don't always consider that the world as we see it is a very unique place. It is very rare for two individuals to share the same perspective of what the world is and how they experience the world. So moving away from Ikigai, we're going to dedicate ourselves tonight to just discuss how we would get to a world for which we can answer the question, what does that world need? Okay, so how do you see your world? Now, depending on where we are, we might see the world as a very difficult place, stacked against us, very hard to succeed in. And this often happens because we don't always consider the bigger picture. So if we look at it, this is a little picture that says to us, this is sometimes how fortunate you might feel in the world. And as you can see, that guy sitting there is not too happy, pretty miserable. Life is raining down on him. But unfortunately, he's only got his own perspective. Okay, because if you widen this perspective a little bit, you're going to see a little bit more information about this world that this guy is so miserable about. And that world looked like this. So even though in the first part, he doesn't look like he's feeling very fortunate, when we look at the second part of this, we actually realize that with a lot more information and expanding the vision, he's actually a very fortunate young man. Good. So let's talk about how we can stretch our awareness in the world. And I'll go into this a little bit more in more detail later. But in life, we often fall in the trap of letting the world around us either be the product of our parents, our friends, our families, or the ones that form us, our companies, our educational institutions, and our communities. And often we wake up in a world not of our own choosing. But by now we're so conditioned to our circumstances that it becomes very difficult to break free from the limitations of that world that does not serve us. And if we look at our perception of the world, we may think that we see the path ahead of us. We may think we know where we are going, but often the world that we perceive is just a very small part of the world that really exists. We know from psychology, they've got the concept of the Giraffe window. Now, the Giraffe window is a technique that's often used in corporate companies, and it helps people understand the relationship with themselves and with others. And it describes 4 areas. The first area is the arena, and it describes everything we know about ourselves and what others know about ourselves. Then the second area is the facade, and that area describes everything I know about myself but others are not aware of. And then we get to the blind spot. The blind spot describes what others know about me but I don't. And then finally, there's the unknown, and that area describes what no one, including myself, knows about me. And these perceptions play through to the world that we are living in as well. So I can start with this world that is known to me. And I look at it and I can see a path going into the future. I can see there's a nice lake on the side. I can see there's a support on the left where I can rest on. And by showing this picture to you, you as people in the world also know everything that I know about this world. But when I extend my awareness consciously to notice what is possible, a new perception of the world that is available to me appears. And suddenly I just notice a little bit more. Now, this is a world that's much bigger, and others may know of it, but until I extended my awareness, I was not aware of how much bigger or different this world can be. And over time, by extending my awareness, I can create more. And to see what ultimately is possible in the world that I want to be a part of, I can keep on extending my awareness and learn more and more until I can see as much as is possible for me. So how magnificent can your world be if you pay attention to expanding your awareness? So the next question is, how do we start with all of this? Okay, so let's talk about building your work. Now, purpose work always starts with yourself. And as I'm talking, I'm going to ask you to just ponder and answer for yourself some of the following questions that I'm going to be asking. And we can start with the very simple question, what is the beauty within you? Part of being able to create your own world is finding the beauty within yourself first. You have to learn to accept who you are. It's absolutely crucial that you understand yourself and that you know why you do certain things. All of this is extremely important to the foundation of your world. By knowing your strengths, your weaknesses, and evaluating the things that happen in your life allows you to create a more honest world. Ultimately, your world becomes a reflection of your goals, your ambitions, your desires, and your emotions. The way you see life and the things that happen to you decide the kind of world that you will live in. And what is that world about? Is it a career? Is it about a family? Or is it about a community? What are all the dimensions that you are thinking of bringing into this world? Something about health, something about wealth, something about happiness. All of these are considerations that plays into the world that you want to create, that you want to live within. If your world becomes too one-dimensional and say, okay, I'm only going to fixate on a world where I'm looking at my wealth, then that's going to be a very incomplete world. It's going to disregard your family. It's going to disregard the relationships you have with friends. It's going to disregard your health. And then you get caught up in a world that doesn't serve all of which you are. The next question to consider is, who is part of that world? And here we consider who will be the major stakeholders and power players in this world. How will you build relationships with them and deal with them? Who are the people you should watch out for? Who may harm you? Who may resist you? Who may disadvantage you? And who should not be a part of your desired world? And it always seems like, yes, I have to consider everyone that is in my life. But that's a conscious choice that you can make and say, I do not have to involve everyone in my perfect world. I'll share this from my own perspective. About 2 years ago, I became aware of a number of people in my life that created a lot of negativity, a lot of negative emotion, and acted in a way that was not always in my best interest. And I decided these people should not be a part of my world. So that's an invitation I want to give to everyone on this webinar tonight as well. Go and figure out who in your life serves you and who in your life hampers you. And decide if that is a relationship that you want to continue having in the world that you want to move in, the world that you want to build your purpose for. And the next question is, who's going to be in your tribe? Who's going to be your helpers, your enablers, your coaches, your mentors? Who are you going to look out for and protect? And who's going to look out for you and protect you? And what are going to be the forces that shape this world for you and your tribe? What is going to change it? And what is going to renew it? And how is that going to play out in your relationships and in the relationships that you want to create with significant people in your future? And then there's a very important one, because you also have to answer the question, who will you be in this new world? Because in any kind of transformational change, you never want to stay who you are. There is some outcome. There's some idealized version of yourself. There's some role that you want to play in a future world that you are not ready for right now. So it's a good idea to think of this world that you want to create something for. Who are you going to be? What are you going to have to change? What is the strengths that you will need to have in that world? And then what will be your values? And what will be the values and ethics of this world? Malcolm Gladwell said it best. He said the values of the world we inhabit and the people we surround ourselves with have a profound effect on who we are. There's an old hackneyed saying that Jim Rohn used to repeat often, and he said, we are the average of the 5 people we spend most time with. And I agree with that, because the people that you spend time with the most are the ones that actually have the most impact on you. They define what your values are. They define how you build relationships. They define how you behave in the world. They define how you present yourself in the world. Unfortunately, they also the people that are close enough to understand what your weaknesses are. And if it's a good 5 people, they will support you in the development of those weaknesses into strengths. And then the next question is, in this new world, what is the capabilities that you want and need? And then finally, what behavior will you exhibit in this new world? Now, these questions are just prompts. And by answering these questions and reflecting on them, you will start creating a world that over time will grow into that world for which you can answer the question, what is it that this world want? Okay. Now, all of these questions are about expanding your awareness. Now, if we start talking about the Johari window, there's things that you know, there's things that others know about you that you know as well. There's things that others know about you that you don't know, and there's things that no one knows about you, not even yourself. And the only way to expand your knowledge in all of these quadrants or all of these dimensions is to increase your awareness. And what I want to do is I just want to talk a little bit about some of the ways in which you can expand awareness. Okay, so I've prepared this little slide for us, and you can see, and there I've just got 8 contributing factors, and these factors actually support each other very well. So some of them might seem like they overlap, but I want to talk about them each on their own. And I'm going to start with understanding. Now, understanding is not only knowing what your world is about, but it's also about deepening the knowledge and the understanding that you have over time as more and more of your world emerges and become known to you. It's about understanding and reflecting on what's good about your world and how you can develop more of it. But it's also about understanding and reflecting on those parts of your world that is negative and should be avoided or reduced. Often along the way, we lose the best of us and we get sidetracked by things like greed, by anger, or a multitude of negative thoughts and emotions. Awareness and understanding develops when we become conscious of our internal states and emotions when they appear, and then through identifying and managing the triggers that create either a good response or a bad response. And by knowing what these triggers are, this understanding should lead us to more of the better states and behavior, and of course, less of the negative. Now, in simple terms, that means that if you foster certain causes in your life, good things will result for you and others. On the other hand, if you foster other causes, bad things will result. It's as simple as that. Now, wisdom is knowing which is which. Okay. The second point that I want to talk about is intention. Now, intention determines the state of being in which you want to live and act. Okay. Intention has the broad aim of creating and supporting the best possible world within which you want to exist and which negative things you want to avoid. Often, when we do exercises in self-transformation, we will always start the exercise with the first step. And the first step will ask, what is your intention? Okay. And with that intention, you set the aim within which you are going to exercise that exercise. But in the same way, almost in any deliberate action that you have in your life, once you set your intention, you are basically creating a broad aim within which you're going to execute whatever behavior or states will follow. We used to have a saying in NLP that energy flow where attention goes, but the truth is energy flows where intention goes. And if your intention is a good one, energy will flow to a good place. Now, the implications are far-reaching because most of us participate on a daily basis in activities whose requirements or ripples may involve harm to others or the world that we are creating. And it's not that we want to bring harm to the world. And what we're trying to do with intention is we want to go and see through all of the possibilities of our experience and see that any action that we are going to do, what is going to be the positive and negative effect this intention might bring? And then act accordingly to negate the negativity and build up the positivity. So intention is almost like looking into the future and creating an aim of a good outcome. and then aligning your actions with that. Which brings us to the next point, which is words. Words create our reality. Malicious and negative words and malicious and negative thoughts manifest in the world that we create. And the moment that negativity manifests, unfortunately, the form of the world follows the words that creates that reality. If you want to create a good world, you have to keep watch over your words. And when it becomes harmful, you must become aware of the triggers of the negative words and the understanding of its effects. And once again, this is about expanding the awareness. By becoming very aware of how negative intention, negative triggers, negative words, and negative effects enters into your reality, you can actually manage that and say, okay, well, I'm not going to allow this, and I am going to negate the negativity, which expands the awareness of how you are creating the reality that ultimately belongs to your world. Then we get to action. Now, action is doing what is right in this world and knowing when you are doing something that is wrong, that it harms your world. So this is an awareness that where you would test before you take an action. Am what I about to do going to promote this world that I want, or is it going to harm it? And if it's going to harm it, might it even destroy the world that I want? So it's about having that awareness that every action that I take will play out towards either the successful creation of this world or not. And sometimes it may harm that world, and sometimes it might destroy it. Okay, then we get to living. Now, living in this world that you want is supported by, number one, developing the skills and the abilities that you need to function in your world. So it's about continuously understanding what it is that you need to be able to do and then adjusting. Because knowing what it is that you want to accomplish helps you sustain your living in that world and the world that you want to exist in. It's also about building relationships that sustain and expand you and your world, and living in a balanced way. The moment that living does not align with the actions that you take, with the words, with the intention and the understanding, what you are basically doing is you're not living into this world that you want to create. Okay, which brings us to state. Now, states are the conditions that we are in at any moment in time. States typically is a combination of your emotions, your physical condition, and your thought. Negative states lead to negative behavior and actions. Positive states create good behavior and actions. That is a very simple statement, but does that mean that if a negative state comes up, you should ignore it? No. The moment the negative state comes up, it's about acknowledging that state and then acting in such a way that it is not a negative action or negative behavior. In state management, you can consciously control your states, but controlling your states starts with being aware of it. And being aware of it is all about being absolutely 100% in the present, which is the next factor here, which is presence. Now, presence is something that you cultivate to enable your awareness in this moment. If you ever set yourself up in a situation where you are thinking about memories of the past, or even thinking about things that might happen in the future, you are disengaging with this present moment. And the moment that happens, then it's very difficult for you to be aware of, are you living in the right way? Are you taking the right action? Are you using the right words? Is your intention the right intention? And are you developing an understanding? So just by disconnecting from the presence, you're actually negating all of these other factors. Okay. Presence is a continuous, non-judgmental acceptance of the awareness of your inner and outer world, especially your inner one, where all of your states and emotions must be noted. Presence is also something that really feels good on its own. You know, most of us, when we are in this present moment and noticing what's happening all around us, noticing how we are connected to this world and to everyone around us, it's a good feeling. It's relaxed. You feel alert. You feel peaceful. And by being in this moment, it allows you to develop an increased self-knowledge and self-acceptance. It also helps you notice and change old patterns, but mostly it helps you to respond better to others and the world because your focus is on the here and the now. You are responding to things as it happens. And by mindfully accepting a difficult experience and opening up to it without resistance, often allows you to just move on. Okay. Then we get to focus. Focus is actually a very natural ability that everyone has. And I know it sounds weird in this world of ADHD and, you know, the limited attention span that we developed with all the devices around us. But focus is actually something that's natural. And everyone can get better at it. Focus is like a muscle. If you exercise focus, you make it stronger. Focus allows us to notice and apply attention. And not only apply attention, but to sustain attention and then to direct energy. By cultivating your focus, you create a stream of attention to firstly ourselves, but also to our world and how it is changing in the moment. Now, all of these factors contribute to our awareness of the world that we are creating. By practicing to expand our awareness, we become able to stretch our perception and our understanding of the world. And by stretching our perception, our understanding of the world, we are building and ultimately creating this world for which our purpose or our ikigai can emerge. Okay, so the next question is, what happened to Giraffe Payang? Now, from the desolation of that sun-baked sandbar, his inspiration to create a better world became an obsession. He started and he began planting bamboo. Then he started planting other species. And the way that is in the fertile period between April and June, he planted trees. And in the time when trees wouldn't take, for the rest of the year, you would collect seeds and saplings. Now, over the course of nearly 4 decades, he planted so many trees that he's lost count. He estimated that there are hundreds and thousands of trees on that island, and the groves are so thick that they shocked even the forest department when it stumbled upon them. Now, something that's interesting is he did this without permission. He saw something that he felt passionate about, and he decided, I'm going to do something about this. I'm going to create a world in which I want to live. And the locals considered him crazy, but over time, he was celebrated as a conservationist. Now, the forest was actually named after him as it developed, and it's called the Molai Forest. And it encompasses now an area of about 550 hectares of forest, which is larger than Central Park in New York City. Now, thanks to Giraffe, the Molai Forest now houses Bengal tigers, it houses Indian rhinoceros, it houses reptiles, it houses over 100 deer and rabbits, in addition to monkeys, and there's a number of varieties of birds, including a large number of vultures that came back once this forest started growing. Now, the government only learned about his forest in 2008, And I mean, he started in 1978. Okay. And they only learned about it when a herd of more than 100 wild elephants strayed from government ground into his forest. Now, ever since then, the elephants are regular visitors to this forest every single year. They generally stay in the forest for around 6 months, and until now, they've given birth to almost, well, a little bit more than 10 calves in this forest. Now, to honor his remarkable solo undertaking, he's also been given a number of awards and cash rewards, most of which he just took and he spent it on planting even more forest. So the question is, if you think about the world that you want to create, think about the question, what is the world that you need to build to express your purpose? I found a little piece of writing on a blog. It's called the Better Life Coaching blog. And this little piece says, just imagine what the world would be like if no one had dared to think that flight or space travel was a possibility, to find cures for horrible diseases, to do something about slavery, to leave the safety of their homeland to discover new lands, to start up new enterprises that solve challenging problems, make money, and create jobs, to write songs and poems, paint murals, create masterpieces, or build majestic castles and cathedrals, to put their name on a ballot, to have the audacity to invent something new, to reach out to someone in pain, providing healing, comfort, and empathy, to say sorry or to reconcile relationships, to push the limits of human endurance and run a marathon, swim the English Channel, or climb Everest for the first time. Now imagine that you are one of the daring ones, and you are bold enough to move beyond the couch of the comfortable into the realm of the remarkable. What does this mean for you? How can you change the world? And what are you going to do about it? Thank you. Short, I'm going to unmute you guys and let's see if we're ready for some questions or discussion. Okay, maybe while someone's thinking of something, let me just sort of expand a little bit. So if we look at the concepts of Ikigai, the very first question is the question about what is it that the world needs? And the whole intention behind that question is to sort of understand what is it that this world needs that I could potentially bring to the world. Now, a while ago, Sjoerd, you were there, we ran some sessions at the ACRI conference in South Africa, and it was almost like there was an assumption that the world is the same for all of us. And
yeah,
the answer is actually no, it's not the same for all of us, because every single person perceives the world differently. And once you give someone the permission to go and design the world that he or she can think of something that that world needs, now it becomes an interesting question. You know, it's not what does the world need, world peace. It actually becomes it becomes something that now says I can create my own world and I can understand for this world what is it that this world needs. And
yeah, that was a nice period in the session that we were explaining to each other what our world was about.
Yes.
Where we came from, what we were dealing with on a daily basis or on a regular basis. And that made it clear that we were working from a different world. Geology as well. Geographically, I mean, Francois is from South Africa and I'm from the Netherlands. So our worlds are completely different. But we also we deal with different people, we deal with different problems, we deal with different achievements, challenges. So there's a lot to be thought of when you're describing your own world.
Yeah. And the thing is, once you understand your own world, you can bring something to the table that no one else has. Because you're bringing it from a point of view that have a world that may or may not intersect with other worlds that people are thinking of. And what you are bringing is a fresh perspective. But you're also bringing it from a point of real understanding. Okay. And the point that I wanted to make in the second part of this webinar is that the way that you discover this world is by asking questions and also building the awareness that you not only comes from your inner states, but also from your outer states. Because by answering those questions, I could, for example, ask a question, okay, what would I want my identity to be? And by being absolutely present in the moment, I can develop an understanding and I can feel what my state is about how I would show up in the world.
Yeah, Francois, Jan here.
Yes.
Something I'm struggling a bit with. That's based basically on the example of Giraffe. You say, what does the world need? I think that's a tough one. Isn't it more to what can you do which could contribute to the world?
Well, if we look at the example of Giraffe, he saw something that disturbed him. He saw a nest of dead snakes who died.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I want a world in which this does not happen, where animals and reptiles can be protected. Okay. And without permission, without going to government and saying, well, this is what's wrong here, he decided, well, he'll do something. Mm-hmm. And he created a world in which he planted a forest essentially for himself. He started in 1978. 40 years later, the government noticed that this guy was doing something. So he understood the world that he saw in his own mind. And if you go to our Facebook page, the Break the Threshold Facebook page, I've actually posted the little movie. There's a 16-minute movie that they made about Giraffe called Man of the Forest. And in there, he explains how he learned and how his knowledge expanded and how he started talking to people. So this world wasn't fully formed there on the first day that he planted his first seed. This world developed over time as his awareness of what this island, which was basically a sandbar with no plants on it, as his understanding grew and as his awareness expanded about what should be done, he learned more and more and more. And if you watch that little movie, he actually explains it very well towards the end there about he knows that this piece of land needs so many palm trees because the palm trees are going to stop the soil from being washed away. And that was an understanding they didn't have on the first day.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So it's not as much as saying, well, this is the problem, let me fix it. He found a world to which he wanted to belong, and over time that world expanded, and he adjusted his behavior, he adjusted his understanding the whole time to keep up with it. But he still lives in a world that and if you watch the movie, you'll see it. He still lives in a world that not a lot of people have an understanding for, but he's very clear on what his world is about and what his purpose is. Because, okay, tonight we sort of, unfortunately, we've got it a little bit arse backwards because we went through a whole cycle of webinars earlier this year. And this one actually expands on the very first session that we had way back, I think when was it? March?
June, I think.
Yeah. And tonight's session, we basically talked about the very first question that you ask if you want to move towards purpose. Because if you know what the world needs, if you know what you really love to do, if you know what you're really good at, if you know what you can be paid for, the intersection that happens of the answers between those 4 questions, that's the one that actually gives you your reason to being, that gives you your purpose. Now here we've got Jadav. He knew what the world needed because the world was destroyed. Okay. He knew what he was good at. He knew what he loved to do. He was good at planting plants. He knew that he was good at it. And he kept on learning, he expanded awareness. And ultimately, he wasn't formally paid for it, but he got some rewards out of it. And of course, he took that rewards and he just sort of invested it right back into his forest. But his purpose at this point is absolutely 100% connected into this forest that he's building.
So, Francois, I concur. It's quite interesting that before you start the hero's journey, you need to understand your purpose. And you need a future that's going to draw you towards that purpose. So I thought it was a very good presentation. And I think if you play these sessions out in the future, this would be I would assume this would be the best one to start with.
Well, it should be the only one.
Getting to that future is obviously requires a lot of discipline, dedication, not traveling off the path, not losing heart. So the road's not always easy, but if your purpose is quite clear and you're aware and you're passionate, you can get there.
The whole foundation for me is that if you do not understand or have a sense of what your purpose is, and remember, your purpose doesn't have to be clear-cut.
No.
If you remember way back to when we started talking about purpose, purpose is something that emerges over time.
Yeah.
And as you discover more and more about the world that you want to serve, about what you are good at, about what you really love to do, about what you can be paid for, your purpose over time becomes clearer and clearer and clearer. But you have to develop an awareness. Yeah. Because if you have no awareness of your purpose, you're not going to move towards a clear-cut purpose.
I agree. I think a lot of people aren't even thinking about where they want to be in the future, what world they want to live in. A lot of people are living in terms of past issues.
Yeah.
Living, you know what I mean? That awareness slide of yours was very good, because you need to practice on each element in order to grow your awareness.
Yeah. I mean, if you look where we are at in this time of year, we're going to go into the silly season, and just after the silly season, lots of people are going to make lots of resolutions for next year. Now, we all know what happens with the majority of those resolutions. Around about 2 days after the new year, half of them have been broken, and about 2 weeks in, all of them have been lost. And the reason for that is because, and this is my opinion is that if you haven't got a clear-cut purpose, you're going to make resolutions that's not aligned with your core being. And if you make resolutions like that, you're going to lose them. Whereas if you have a purpose that you are passionate about, any resolution that you make that is aligned with that purpose actually motivates you to achieve your purpose.
I agree.
That's simple. No, it's not simple. You have to really craft it in time. But as soon as you know your purpose, it does make it more easy to really live up to it.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not suggesting for a moment that I'm sitting here as an enlightened being knowing my purpose. Absolutely not. My purpose is very, very slowly, and sometimes I feel way too slowly, emerging from this mist. And I'm not always sure if I'm seeing the ramifications, but I know working on my purpose is pulling me in the right direction.
Yeah, that's also what people are talking about, having a spot on the horizon and have a focus. And when I talk about it, I always have a blurry focus. And I think that's in line with your mist, Francois.
Well, as long as you said blurry and not bloody.
No, blurry.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, it's also tempting to sort of look at purpose and, you know, have the conditioning of strategy and goals and executables and measurements kick in. But that's not what purpose is about. You know, even if you look at an organization, a purpose is something that is beyond that. Purpose ultimately feeds everything that an organization is. It feeds culture. It feeds the way people behave towards each other. It feeds into strategy and says, well, if this is our purpose, who are we going to do business with? How are we going to treat our customers? How are we going to interact with our partners? And I mean, just in getting to be aware of the world, I mean, if I go back to what is your identity, what is your values, what is your capabilities, what's your behavior? If you lift this to a higher level, to an organization for a moment, how is the world that an organization wants to add value to? What is that world going to be like? Who is going to be a part of that world? Who do we want to sort of push value propositions to? What is going to be our identity? How do we want those people that we want to be partners or customers or investors, how do we want them to perceive us? What will be our values? And will we do business with people that don't agree on our values? I was very fortunate. About 2 weeks ago, I did a training with Howard Schultz from Starbucks. What was incredible for me there is when he came back to Starbucks, when it landed into trouble, one of his first things that he did was a reaffirmation to values. And he said, we will not do business with people that do not live the values that we live. Everything that we talked about here, about creating a world, you can apply it to an organization as well.
Yeah, it's about who is part of that world and who is going to be in your tribe.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I mean, if you go to marketing literature is all about picking the exact client that you want to deal with. There you are already starting to decide and design who is going to be a part of this world that you see.
No, just thank you, Francois. It was very enlightening, and first time I attended this one, but yeah, it gives a lot of things to think about, yeah, and to get them in the right place, which will be a nice challenge.
Well, it's actually interesting how we got to the topic of this webinar, because when we, Sjoerd and myself, we ran 2 sessions at the ACRI conference, which is a international creativity conference here in South Africa. And there was this insight that when we start talking about what does the world need, that people might be tempted to sort of take an abstracted version of the world that would not have value. And that's why we, in our session, we actually specified, and Sjoerd talked about what his world is, and I talked about what my world is. But one of the things that we didn't adequately cover in that session was, how do you go about designing a world for which you can provide something that it needs?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. Because as I said earlier, that's a bit I'm struggling a bit with what does the world need and what's your contribution to the world. From your own perspective, your own contribution is the most important bit. What can you do? And I think you have to limit yourself to that element, because you need so much more, but you can't do everything. If you can touch base on what you can do, that would be, I think, a better starting point.
Yeah, and I mean, I almost see this world that you create almost like you bought some really nice pants, and now you're going on a diet, and now suddenly the pants doesn't fit anymore, so you adjust it a little bit so it fits again, and then you lose a little bit more weight and you adjust it. So I'm not saying that on day one everyone will know exactly what this world is about, but over time they will develop this world. And, you know, over time, you will actually get a feel for, is this the right world that I'm developing? Does this world exist, and is it as important in general consciousness as it is in my own consciousness?
Fair point.
I've got some experience working with entrepreneurs, and typically when I ask them, okay, so who's going to be your customers? And the first response almost always for a new entrepreneur is, well, we're going to do all things for all people.
Yeah, sounds familiar.
Yeah. So that's the first approximation that they have of what the world is like. And then very quickly they find out that if you arrive at an organization and they ask you, what are you good at? And you say, well, we do everything for everyone. Just the response there causes them to reevaluate this world in which they want to function. And then often if they have good common sense, their world becomes a lot more specific, and the things that they want to do becomes a lot more specific, right up to that sweet spot where they've got an offering that they can present to a world that's ready for it. Yeah, so that's maybe an analogy.
Yeah, I fully agree. That's where the focus element comes in, is what are you really good at and what can you contribute to the world? Yes.
Because if you go to a world where we can do all things for all people, no one is that good. And unfortunately or fortunately, most organizations will say to you, I don't believe you.
And they're right.
Thank you very much for showing up.
Okay.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.